Welcome to the first episode of Historical Baddies. I'm your host Simi. Grab a snack and a drink and tune in as we uncover the untold stories of history's most notorious women. Picture this, a queen so cunning she flipped her enemies into allies. Yep, it's wild and we're spilling all the tea. That's right, we're here to shine a light on a notorious woman who left an unforgettable mark on history's pages, revealing their intriguing and sometimes downright sinister tales. From scheming queens to serial poisoners, these women have shaped history in ways you never imagined. In each episode, we'll explore one baddie from history. We'll dig into their lives, their motivations, and legacies they left behind. But be aware, not everything is black and white as it seems. So let's get started. So today we're starting with a figure who embodies cunning and controversy, Elizabeth Bathory. Before we dive in, let's set the scene. The year is 1602 and Europe was basically medieval vibes on steroids. Castles everywhere, creepy superstitions, and nobles throwing shade left and right. Hungary? Totally chaotic, stuck between the Ottoman invasion and rich families beefing over power. Kinda crazy. But imagine this. You're in a sprawling, dimly lit castle with stone walls that seem to whisper secrets. The smell of damp earth and candle wax is everywhere. Life was wild back then, and everyone was either defending their land, plotting against someone, or freaking out over, witches. It's no wonder someone like Elizabeth thrived in the middle of all of this chaos. Let's talk about Elizabeth Bathory and how she became the woman history remembers her as. Born in, I can't pronounce this, so
Nerbader, Hungary.
She was born in a time of war between Hungary and Turkey in which Turkish invaders were pillaging surrounding lands. There were bloody battles constantly either over religion or land happening, but Elizabeth lived a fairly peaceful life. She wasn't in like a, very chaotic environment due to like the protection of her family. Elizabeth Bathory had an unusual upbringing for the time. Her family was fairly normal, but there were rumors of them being Satan worshippers and very sadistic, which once again, take this with a grain of salt. She was born into major money and clout, but her childhood was straight up dark. People say she saw a lot of shady stuff happen. Elizabeth likely witnessed brutal public executions of peasants as well as the punishment for misbehaving students, and they were known to be very harsh and inhumane at the time. What really set her apart was her intelligent ruthlessness. This would later become instrumental in her rise to power. By the time she married a Hungarian nobleman at the age of 15, she was already making waves. She moved to Čachice Castle, located in present-day Slovakia. I actually visited this castle in 5th grade because I'm originally from Slovakia, so I actually got to tour the whole castle, which was really neat. And yeah, ever since I was like a little girl, I was always obsessed with her story, so that's why I chose this as the first episode of Historical Baddies. While her husband was often away leading campaigns against the Ottoman Empire, Elizabeth managed their estate and was pretty much responsible for the well-being of the local peasantry. Her and Ferencz's relationship wasn't greatest, especially since he was constantly away, and apparently there's a rumor that he struggled with alcoholism. Elizabeth and Ferenc were very wealthy. Ferenc became a young warlord, so their wealth only continued to grow. Through his extensive military training, he was the ideal role for the captain of Hungarian army and later became known as the Black Knight of Hungary. He would then spend the rest of his life leading battles against the Turks while Elizabeth traveled between their many estates, managing profits from war and their combined inheritance. Nearly 10 years after their marriage, Elizabeth and Ferenc began to have children. Their first daughter, Anna, was born around 1585 and was followed by two more girls, Ursula, born around 1590, and Catalan, born around the year 1594. Elizabeth also bore two sons, Andras in 1596 and Paul in 1598. Unfortunately, Oriska was to die of mouth rot at a young age, and Andras also passed away in 1603. Her three surviving children, Anna, Katalin, and Paul, would inherit the estates and wealth from Elizabeth in her last will and testament. Before his death, he wrote to friends in political power, particularly the Prime Minister of Hungary and the one to eventually convict Elizabeth of her crimes, seeking protection for Elizabeth and his children regarding his estate and wealth. Interestingly, Elizabeth had likely begun killing servant girls while Ferenc was alive and had likely even learned some of her torture methods from the warlord himself. A few authorities in the ministry had become suspicious of all the dead girls turning up in Elizabeth's castle, but Ferenc most likely bribed them with money, title, or threats. Continued this way for years until Ferenc's death in 1604. After her husband's death, Elizabeth took control of the vast estates, making her one of the most powerful women in history. And if you know, back in the day, that was not a thing, you know? And then rumors started to circulate. Let's get into the juicy stuff. Why Elizabeth Bathory is considered a baddie. Her actions were legendary, but not in the way most people aim for. So the big gossip, Elizabeth supposedly tortured and killed a ton of young girls. Rumor has it she thought bathing in their blood was like an anti-aging hag and was gonna make her look beautiful and young and flawless the rest of her life. I don't know what the thought process was really there, but gross, right? According to testimonies from the time, Bathory lured young peasant girls into her castle with promises of employment. Once there, it's alleged that she subjected them to horrific tortures, including severe beating, burning, mutilation, and even biting their flesh. These gruesome tales earned her the title Blood Countess. And this wasn't just like one-off thing. As the numbers of missing girls kind of increased, people started talking about all of these alleged crimes happening, and kind of Europe started to get shocked, which this led to a investigation. In 1610, King Matthias II assigned the Palatine of Hungary to investigate these allegations. On December 29, 1610, and his men raided Chakita Castle. According to reports, they discovered evidence of torture and imprisoned Bathory in her own home. January 1611, a trial was held and testimonies from over 300 witnesses detailed Bathory's alleged crimes. While her accomplices were executed, Elizabeth Bathory was sentenced to life imprisonment, confined to a room in Chakita Castle until her death in 1614. Was Elizabeth Bathory truly guilty of these heinous crimes, or was she just a victim of politically motivated plot? Some historians argue that the charges against her were exaggerated or fabricated to tarnish her reputation and allow others to seize her lands. As a wealthy, powerful widow who owned extensive estates, Bathory was a prime target, those seeking diminishing her influence. And according to the evidence and the testimonies, they weren't, I guess, the most trustworthy, if you know what I mean, which further kind of just questions the whole thing. That wraps up the first episode of Historical Baddies, but here's a question to think about. Was Elizabeth Bathory a ruthless killer, or was she a victim of smear campaign driven by greed and misogyny? Join us next week as we explore another historical baddie. If you enjoyed today's deep dive into the life of Elizabeth Bathory, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment, and don't forget to follow me on all of my social media pages, which are _Violet on TikTok, Instagram, and of course here on YouTube. Bye besties.